Welcome to Astroventure, the DSLR astrophotography channel. Hey there, Astroventures. Welcome back. Well, the eclipse is coming up on April 8th, and unfortunately, and I'm really crushed, really disappointed, I am not going to make it down to Texas like I had planned to be able to image this eclipse. In spite of that, I know that a lot of you are going to be heading out all across the United States to go ahead and capture this eclipse, and I decided to put together a video for those of you that are able to go and image it when I can't. So let's go over a few things. First off, let's discuss some safety. Safety. First and foremost, if your little voice inside your head is telling you that something doesn't seem right, please stop, evaluate. You just can't undo the damage that the sun can do to your eye in just a moment. And your little voice that's inside your head is oftentimes far smarter than what we are in the things that we're doing, and if you'll just listen to it, I know so many times in life I could have avoided some injury myself. So if your little voice is telling you that something doesn't seem right with what you're doing, stop, reassess, reevaluate, and then move forward. Second, your solar filter. Solar filters must always be on the end of the setup. That has to be the first point where the light passes through, is that solar filter. If you don't do that, okay, and you try to put it in some other configuration, what's going to happen is that leading optic at the front of the lens becomes a magnifying glass. And much like little boys running around with magnifying glasses and frying ants underneath a summer sun, that's what's going to happen with that leading optic, and you don't want to do that. So you must configure with the solar filter being the first thing that the light passes through, okay? Additionally, it needs to be a solar filter of some type. Do not try and use welding glass and everything else. You need a solar filter. And I know that I'm harping on that a lot, but the point in fact is that, again, you can't undo eye safety. Next, when you reach full solar eclipse, you're going to have to remove that solar filter. So again, you can't undo the damage that you're going to do to yourself if you do it wrong. So personally, what I did is I had a number of alarms set up, both on my phone, and I had some secondary alarms set up. And these alarms were set up, the first one I had was to let me know about a minute before the solar eclipse started. That way, I'm ready, I'm in place, and I can start imaging the solar eclipse because I wanted every single stage of it. My next alarm was to let me know that I was about a minute out from full solar eclipse. Then I had an alarm that's set off, and if you can have a helper to help keep track, that's great. But I was a one-man show. So anyway, my next alarm set to let me know when I was at full solar eclipse. And then I had another alarm that was set for 15 seconds later. Reason being is because if there was any mistake in my alarms by a few seconds, I didn't want to be pulling off that solar filter too early. So I had the alarm to tell me when I was at full solar eclipse, and then 15 seconds later to go ahead and actually pull the solar filter off. I then did my imaging. I had an alarm to let me know when I was at the midpoint of full eclipse. And then I had an alarm to let me know 30 seconds prior to the ending of the eclipse to get my solar filter back on. I had a 15-second, and I know this is a lot of alarms, and that's why I said an additional person can really help. But so that 30-second before it ended, get that solar filter on. 15 seconds to let me know that, hey, you're 15 seconds, and if you don't have that solar filter on, you need to turn your camera away so that you don't damage equipment or my eye. And then I had the alarm when the solar eclipse the full eclipse ended and that sun started to peek back out. And then my last alarm was to tell me when when the solar eclipse was over, finished, the sun was fully exposed again. I know that's a lot of alarms, but the point is, you don't get to do it over if you screw up and injure your eye. And for that matter, you don't get to do the solar eclipse over because it's going to be a long while before there's another one here in the US for us to chase. So now that we have the safety things out of the way, excuse me. Now that the safety is out of the way, let's go over doing some imaging. You need to get the solar filter on there, go out and do some imaging at the time of day for when you're going to be imaging the solar eclipse. Reason being is that first thing in the morning, the sun is a little more filtered than it is when it's straight up, when the atmosphere is at its thinnest versus at the end of the day. So for whatever time it is that you're going to be doing your imaging, you need to go out and do some test imaging to figure out what settings you need to make it work for your location. So I did exactly that. Now, on my camera here, this first image that you're looking at here, I went out and set this one using 1/500th of a second, an aperture of 6.3, and I had set my ISO at 400. Reason I did that is because this particular solar filter lets through true color of the sun. Some of the solar filters, the sun will appear yellow, but this one allows true color. And with that, it allows more light. When I did the other solar filter, my first eclipse that I imaged, that one there, the sun was yellow. It cut down a lot more light. So for that one, I needed an ISO of 800. Knowing I had more light, I went ahead and decided to image at ISO of 400. But in doing so, as you can see here, it blew out my image. I was getting blinkies on the back of my camera, and then looking at my histogram, which is the true measure of what's going on. You can see on the left-hand side of my histogram, the wall is being climbed, and that's the black area in the sky that the solar filter is blackening out. And on the right-hand side, you can see where the sun is climbing that right wall, meaning that I am overexposed. So 1/500th worked great for shutter speed, but the ISO too sensitive. And the thing is I decided rather than speeding up the shutter speed because I wanted the cleanest image, I decided to lower my ISO. So on this next image here, this one here, I did this imaging at, again, the 1/500th, aperture 6.3, but I did an ISO of 100, and that got me down to exactly where I wanted to be. If you take a look at this histogram, you can see the left-hand side, it's climbing that left wall. That's great. That's all that blacked out area. And then you can see on the right-hand side this bump in that last quarter, splitting that last quarter between climbing the wall and blowing out, and the start of that last quarter. And together, that gives me a perfect spot, because what's going to happen is as the eclipse begins, the lighting is going to become less and it's going to crawl back to the left-hand side. When the eclipse is ending, it's going to climb back to the right. And with my positioning of that bump in that last quarter of the histogram, it's going to allow my sun to be nice and bright, but it's not going to be blowing out. And it gives room for the histogram to move back and forth as I go through the shooting process. Now, you see how I'm set up here on this tripod. This is how I have set up to shoot two different eclipses now. And I like to have a ball head on here because when everything starts happening, I can loosen the ball head and then I can track the sun as I do my imaging. With that, it stabilizes the setup really well, and I can still run my image stabilization because I do have movement going on, so it does help. So with that, whatever settings you're using, and I would turn on the image stabilization. It just helps. If this camera were mounted and there was no movement going to happen with the camera, using image stabilization can actually blur your images because of the fact that the camera sees the movement, thinks the camera might be moving, and it can cause some jittering of your optics and blur your image. But because, again, you're holding this and you are moving it, the stabilization can actually help with this setup. So, loosen that up, and then you can track and follow with it. Now, when you reach that full eclipse, okay, and we mentioned that with the alarms for safety and everything. So the alarm has gone off telling you that you have hit full eclipse. 15 seconds later, that's when I had the next alarm to tell me I can now pull off my solar filter. So I'm going to pull that solar filter off. At this point here, what you're going to want to do is start taking pictures and do a picture, check the back of your camera quickly. What I did last time to be able to catch all the corona glow coming off of the sun was I needed to start increasing my ISO to get that glow to show up, because in this configuration as you're set up for the eclipse, sure, you've pulled the filter off, but the sun is behind the moon. So you're just not getting the light you need. And so to catch that glow of the corona, and I hope that's the correct name for it, I believe it is, but to catch that glow, you're going to have to get much more sensitive on your ISO to get that to show up. Now remember, I know that I'm set at ISO 100. I'm sitting here, I'm cranking up those ISOs, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep checking the back of my camera quickly until I get to that point where I got that beautiful glow, and then I'm listening for my alarms. The moment that 30-second alarm happens, bam, solar filter back on. Don't forget, you've got to quickly then reset your ISO back to what you were using when you were shooting the whole process of the eclipse. Otherwise, what's going to happen if you forget that, you're going to start shooting at that super high ISO that was meant to catch the corona under the full eclipse, and you're going to end up blowing out your sun as it starts to reappear. So you've got to remember to kick that back to an ISO of, for me, 100. For you, whatever it is that your setting is going to be. What I also did is, I just made sure that I had an empty memory card, and I shot the heck out of the eclipse. I did have an alarm set to the side, and that particular one was set to repeat every 15 seconds, kind of giving me that rhythm so that I could click, click, click. It's not so critical that you get every 15 seconds like I was doing, but I wanted to shoot the heck out of it because it's such a rare event. And then from there, sure, I had an infinite amount of images, but from there I could then go back and pick the images I wanted to put together the collage to make my images for the two different eclipses that I have shot. So there you have it. Those are my tips. Those are my suggestions. If you have a partner that can help you with keeping track of everything, that's great. Otherwise, multiple alarms are really useful. And then one of the things that's kind of cool to do is bring with you a thermometer, and you can place it like right on your tripod leg or whatever, but bring a thermometer with you. It's kind of cool because when I imaged the 2017 eclipse and I was up in Wyoming, I was able to watch the temperature drop 22 degrees from before the eclipse to the peak of the eclipse, and the shadow coming over us. So it was a significant drop. When I did the annular, I didn't notice as much. One, it wasn't a full eclipse, but it was mostly. But the time of the year and everything kind of screwed up doing, getting any kind of really cool temperature reading. But see what you can get. So there you have it. If you have any questions or anything, I'll be more than happy to answer them. And again, I'm only sharing, my advice of what I did and how I did it. And to go back to what I said at the beginning of the video, your safety is your responsibility. If it just doesn't make sense in your head, stop. I am not the almighty guru of this. I'm just sharing with you what it was that I did. So please, you're responsible for your own safety, and, listen to your little voice and what it's telling you should or should not do. Till next time. Sorry. Till next time. I wish you clear skies and uneventful nights, and we would love to see you over at our Facebook group, Astroventure DSLR. And if you like the video and the content, consider sharing, liking, and subscribing.